live. Sarah, I think we're on our way to being live, and I think that the Duke of Edinburgh team are in the process of letting people into the room, which, as we all know from Zoom, is not quite as efficient as letting people into the movie theatre or conference auditorium. But I can see a collection of people, some who join us regularly, some new names adding up there. And by the looks of things, people from around the world, which is incredibly exciting. Sarah, we're going to take a couple of minutes before we kick off. There is a Megan Smith on the line. So the question becomes, is this the Megan Smith from the movie? He's on the line. Or is this another Megan Smith, Sarah? Can you see the list of attendees and all the names?
Oh, no.
Well, it's a long list and it's growing quickly. So we're going to give everybody a couple of minutes to find their way into the room. And we're going to kick off, I think, in about 60 seconds when all these people that the Duke of Edinburgh team are furiously clicking to allow in have got on screen. We're going to have to, before we crack off, we're going to have to answer that question, which is Megan Smith on there the Megan Smith? And we'll tell everybody who she is in a second. Very good. Well, look, the numbers are going up. And I think what we'll probably do is we will get started now so that we use our 55 minutes really wisely. Having interviewed you quite a few times before, Sarah, I know what's going to happen. I'm going to get lost in excitement of asking you questions, be desperate to include questions from the group, and then the time will be over. So to everybody who's with us now, welcome. It's phenomenal to be at our second Alumni Connect event, and I'm really grateful to the Duke of Edinburgh International Award for asking me to host these. For those who don't know me, my name is Emma Sinclair. By day, I guess my day job is I power a global software company that focuses on helping alumni to connect. So if you are on the platform, which I know all of you are, that's our software. So if you love it, you can tell me any complaints, stick them in writing. By side gig, I have lots of other things I'm involved with. I'm a UNICEF business ambassador, and I've had the great honor also of being a little bit involved just on the sidelines with the amazing movie General Magic, which Sarah is going to talk to us about. More importantly, who is Sarah? I know lots of you have seen the social media and had a snoop before we got started, but Sarah is many things. Sarah is an Emmy-nominated and Tribeca-winning film director and maker. She is, her day job, that's just her side job, believe it or not. Her day job is she's the Chief Strategy Officer of Kheiron Medical, who are breaking the frontiers of AI cancer diagnostics in ways that most of us could never have dreamed of. And I guess the final point, which really brings Sarah and I together with all of you on the call, is I have a measly gold Duke of, not gold, God, measly gold. I have a bronze Duke of Edinburgh award. As I've told the story before, I'm still great friends with my friend Cher, who these days is Dr. Sherry Jacobson. And we spent a cold, wet weekend getting lost in a field, putting up a tent inside out and misusing our compass and managed to get away with scoring a bronze. Sarah, just before we kick off, is what brings us all together. And I don't know the answer. What Duke of Edinburgh award level do you have? Is it bronze, or are you a step up from me?
I am just a step up, but only one. I'm a silver. But I certainly love the experience, and I have such vivid memories of the hike, especially. It's amazing, isn't it, how it sticks with you?
It is. Well, I feel a little bit of an imposter because on the last meeting, I effectively talked to somebody who was a gold award winner and also a Marsonaut. So just so many things that were just incredibly impressive. And she was talking through how she got her gold. And I was remembering my 24 hours in a tent, eating cold baked beans and effectively finding a phone box, calling our dad and getting a lift. And she was telling these stories of rucksacks and hills and climbing and extreme weather. So phenomenal to know. And I think the final point before we kick off and talk about General Magic is, all the people that are on the line today, that's the commonality that we all share wherever we are in the world. And I've seen people from Togo, from the US, from Australia. There are just so many people on the line from far corners of the world. I think today...
Just a quick note on that. I think the other lovely thing too is how it gets handed down to generations. So my daughters have all done Duke of Edinburgh, and I think they're going to get their golds. I think they're on track to actually beat me. So I love how it becomes something that connects not just us here today, but also future generations.
Yeah, it's not like a static thing where you get a badge. It's just there are, and I think to myself, I did that quite a long time ago now, and yet I'm still enthused by the community, which I guess is what, look, there are probably a number of reasons why people gathered here today. One of them is that as a commonality. Two is probably to hear the incredible story that you're about to tell us, which when I first heard, completely blew my mind. So let's get started, Sarah. We're going to talk about General Magic, this film, this documentary that if I had have watched without having any context, I absolutely would have thought was just a work of pure fiction. It's just, what a great story. Who came up with this great idea? Can you tell us a little bit about what the story of General Magic is?
Well, General Magic is the story of a company in Silicon Valley that in the 1990s was legend. It was the place to work, and it was surrounded by a shroud of secrecy, a bit like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. What was happening inside the doors of this magical place that had the name General Magic? And I was very lucky to be invited into that world as a filmmaker to document what was happening. And what was happening is, this was the team that were inventing what everyone now has in their pocket, the first handheld communicator. So the team that had invented the Mac with Steve Jobs had left Apple and decided that the next thing was, how could they give the power of what was on the desktop at that time into something that people could take around with them all the time? They called it a handheld communicator. It was an extraordinary team, breaking tech frontiers every single day, whether it was touchscreens, USBs, all the things that we take for granted, they were pushing the frontier of. And ultimately, the company failed. But what was fascinating to me as I watched the evolution of the company and then the people who left the company over the years is that the learnings and the lessons that came out of General Magic went on to inform so much of the tech that we have today with us, not just the phones, but the way that we buy things online, the way that we, just so many different things. I'll get into all the details, but essentially it became to me a study in how you bring big ideas to life. And that's why I made the film. I just thought there was enough interesting, amazing stories and some really profound lessons on what does it take when you have a big idea, whether it's a technology or a product or a mission or an institution, foundation, whatever it is that you want to bring into the world. I felt like there was some really elemental lessons that might be useful to other people. And if I could save anyone from the pain of failure, I don't mean everyday failure, because we all fail every day at the hard things we try and do, but I mean like the catastrophic failure, then I've done my job.
Yeah, I know when you first thought about making this, that you thought, this is just for posterity. This might be a great memory for all the guys I know who worked at this company. It's a 1990s Silicon Valley tech company that doesn't exist anymore. And as I think, I think there were magazines that carried this headline, essentially saying it was the greatest company that no one had ever heard of. So you started this thinking it was just a cute little project for everyone who used to work there?
No, I didn't. Well, it wasn't. I didn't. Whenever I do a film or a project, I never go in with the outcome in mind. It's always an exploration for me. So I knew there was an important story here. I knew there was something worth telling. I didn't know who would be interested in hearing it or watching it.
Well, you thought, I remember when you first showed us this little mini clip of an idea, you didn't think that the whole world would be interested in this. You didn't think, as we now know, that it would be an iTunes top 10. You thought that it was maybe just for, maybe your techie friends or something of that ilk. Wasn't that was years ago?
Yeah, but I think I approach everything that way. I think, to me, it's about the journey. I mean, it's wonderful if, you win awards, and of course that's really enjoyable. But for me, it's the pleasure of the making. It's like, there's nothing that beats being in the editing room when you have your footage and you have your story and it starts coming to life. It's so ridiculously exciting. I just can't even begin to put it into words. So for me, that's what it's about. It's about the learning and the journey. And then, of course, if it has an outcome and people like watching it, that is thrilling. But that's not what motivates me.
Well, I think we all know that people like watching it, because these days, obviously over the last few years, it's one Tribeca. It went to iTunes #1. It has been a bestseller. It's on aeroplanes. It's just wonders never cease. And I guess maybe now is a good time to ask the team to play if you could perhaps set it up for us, a sort of 90-second clip. We've got a couple of clips to show people today. What's this first 90 seconds going to show us?
I think this is just the introduction to the whole world. This is taking you on a journey and the start of that journey. Perfect.
Well, we're going to ask the D&V team, who are scurrying away, doing everything in a secret fashion to make us look good, to turn on the clip. Team, are you ready to get that up and running?
In Silicon Valley, there's a lot of origin stories of companies that had the right idea, but were completely at the wrong time, and yet they paved the path for everything else.
There are a handful of stories that define Silicon Valley. You know, there are legends, and General Magic was one of the legends.
You have to believe, you have to be proud, you have to be absolutely convinced that you're going to bend the way the world is moving and you're going to take it in a different direction. If you're always playing it safe and you're not failing, there's a very high probability you're not doing anything particularly important.
No matter how big we dreamed, the fact that you could touch the lives of billions, it was vaguely imaginable, but the scale of it was inconceivable.
The reason you should care about the story of General Magic is because it involves something fundamental, and that is, failure isn't the end. Failure is actually the beginning.
The reason this story so haunts the people who were involved, that they still live with it, is because they knew that they were right.
Did it fail? I mean, the company itself failed. The ideas didn't fail. The people who worked there didn't fail. So, was it a failure?
Amazing, Sarah. And, you know, I'm assuming that almost everybody on the line must have seen the movie, but if they haven't, they're about to hear. I remember when you first told me about General Magic, and in fact, you still do. My mind is blown by the story. So I think maybe let's just touch on a couple of things that I heard in that, you know, touching the lives of billions. Failure isn't the end, it's just the beginning. Can you start off by telling us about some of the things that General Magic produced, some of the people that worked there, and just give us some context? Like, who are the magicians, and why did this story grab the attention of everybody worldwide?
Well, the original magicians, as I said, came out of Steve Jobs's Apple team. So Steve had gone into exile. He'd been let go by the board, and his disciples were in the wilderness, is how I like to describe it. And they were Joanna Hoffman, Andy Hertzfeld, Bill, forgetting his last name, but very, very famous people in the Valley who developed HyperCard, developed the Apple. Joanna was the marketing director for Apple at the age of 24. Just extraordinary people. Bill Atkinson is his name.
Yes.
So they have done, you know, they had done already amazing things. And they, along with the visionary Mark Bratt, who was the founder of the company, had seen the future, and the future was these little portable devices that we could take around and communicate and shop and, you know, search, all the things that we do today. But at the time it was revolutionary, and it was encapsulated in this beautiful red book that Mark had. And he talks about it. He talks about like how he literally goes into the future as if he time travels, looks around, and then captures what he sees and brings it back into the book. And the book isn't just about handheld communication in all its guises. It's about social media. It's about so many things. It's a remarkable work. So they were the original team that came together. And because they were so well known in Silicon Valley, then talent came from all over the world to work at General Magic. Tony Fadell, who went on to develop the iPhone and the iPod with Steve Jobs, he slept outside the building. He called relentlessly to try and get a position. I mean, everybody wanted to work at this company. So he was one of the most amazing. He was, I think, 22 when he joined.
Well, I remember seeing it in the film, and I don't know if everyone's seen it, but it was just hilarious when the head of HR from General Magic, who's obviously on camera, talks about this guy with, you know, greasy hair from Detroit, the other side of the country, who will not stop calling. And of course, you know, for those of us who, you know, for those on the line now who want to have a quick Google, who is Tony Fadell? If you don't already know, you're going to wonder how you don't know that name, and you're never going to forget it. You know, iPod, iPhone. But there were just so many, Nest, you know, so many things during the film we see being created by the team, including Tony. USB hubs, the kind of beginnings of all the things that all of us use every day. if you pay attention during the film, you're like, hold on a second, I know what that becomes.
Yeah, no, exactly. So there's Tony is one of my favorite characters. Megan Smith, who had come from Japan, was working at Apple in Japan. She came to work on the hardware team, and she shows in the movie how they're thinking about touchscreens and how they're making touchscreens work. And she went on to be President Obama's chief technology officer, the first woman in that role. How amazing is that?
Not only how amazing is that, but for everybody in the waiting room, I double checked. And Megan, we know it's you that's listening in. So for those of you who've seen the film and are like watching this lady play around with stuff and talk about the concept of touch screens, she's just listening in right now. So we're on the call with greatness.
Megan, can you join us?
Well, I've already asked that question, and we're just in the process of seeing whether that's possible because we've set all the cons up. So don't you worry. I was like, we can't pass by the opportunity if we can to drag a magician into the conversation. So I guess, following on from that, and the most amazing things that happened there, I think to myself, all of us have some kind of smartphone or some kind of laptop, emojis, touch screens. Can you talk to us about, so for example, the emoji? You blew my mind when you introduced me to the name Susan Kerr, which again, if everybody wants to Google, is another one where you're like, how do I not know this name? Can you tell us a little bit about emojis and general magic?
Well, everyone should know Susan's name. I mean, she's probably influenced more in design and our interaction with the world than any other single human being. Susan designed the icons for the Mac and worked with General Magic to, as Emma said, design these little characteristics of smiles and moving lemons and just all kinds of little icons around birthdays and emotions. And that, it's just extraordinary when you think about it. And when you see it, that there it was, and that was Susan. So everyone should know her name and make sure that she's remembered in the annals as one of the great designers of all time.
These are all people who are very active in the companies that we all know about now. I mean, Susan, I think, is at Pinterest right now. Yeah. If I remember correctly, these are people who, when we see, there are people we see building circuit boards and switches. These are all people who are, senior, but really active in some of the businesses that are now influencing us, 30 years later. As you say, failure, as the video says, failure isn't the end, it's the beginning.
I would also say there's something else important, which is, I think everyone at General Magic was very driven by this mission. Now, we know now that there's a real dark side to the communication technology and the social media technology that was developed in the 90s. But then it was purely about connection and meaning and making the world a better place. And I think that instinct to make the world a better place is still playing out in all of the people that we're discussing. So Megan with her company Future Shape, which is upskilling entire communities around technology. It's about global empowerment and bringing the best ideas to the table. Just an extraordinary work. And Tony now focusing on sustainability. So I think all of those lessons, all of that wisdom and knowledge is being put to bear on some of the most important problems that we face. And I think this is a really exciting time for technology. I think we're, having let the genie out of the box, I think we're increasingly more aware and vigilant about the negative aspects of technology. And at the same time, it just the incredible potential, what we can do. We can solve those problems, whether it's global warming or whether it's, in my case, the company I work for is earlier cancer detection. These are problems we can solve. And I think it's all of those lessons, all of the lessons that you have learned as a community, that when we bring them to bear and we share them in a community and a vision together of how we can change things, that is where the magic happens. And I think that is the true meaning of the word magic in General Magic.
Yeah, well, that word is very befitting. I think let's see the trailer now, because it also gives another perspective on the movie. I think we just saw the trailer, not the opening minutes, didn't we? It was shown the wrong way around, unfortunately.
You saw it. It was right. So you saw the opening of the film.
Okay, perfect. We'll show.
And then now we're going to introduce you to some of the characters.
Let's do that. And then I think what I'm going to have to do after we've seen that is I'm going to have to get you to do some even bigger name drops. I'm going to ask you to share some stories about how and who, for example, eBay started and how General Magic played a part of that. And I have a sneaky feeling that we might be able to make Megan Smith panelist, which would be very exciting. So off we go with the next little video.
In 1990, there was no digital telecommunications industry. It did not exist. There were no digital cell phones. There was no World Wide Web. We're going to create what comes after the personal computer.
And it was a telephone. It was essentially going to be a smartphone with a lot of intelligence.
When we were talking about reinventing telephony, we meant it.
We're trying to make something that people love. We need it to be like your watch, your glasses, your wallet.
We decided to make everything. That meant we were custom building every piece. It's insane.
And how small will it finally be, do you think?
Someday, Dick Tracy wristwatch.
This was the beginning of what became, I think, the most important company that came out of Silicon Valley that nobody's ever heard of.
It was this aura of secrecy. You know, it had Apple's fairy dust sprinkled on it. We had no idea what it was, but by the rumors, it seemed just captivating.
We had no choice but to keep quiet about the things we were doing because other companies were interested in it as well.
Now, it should be noted, John Sculley was running Apple at the time.
He was our ally, or so we thought.
Today, we are launching Newton, a revolution for the pocket.
They had decided to make something essentially based on our original models.
It's the most important thing that I've ever been involved with in my entire life.
It's bad enough you get betrayed by them, but now they're going to try to put you out of business.
That was fighting. That was battle.
I mean, here's a test. What if General Magic never happened? Would we have had Android?
Not a chance. I mean, all these things were linked together, one after another.
So much of what came out of General Magic is the foundation of everything we take for granted today.
And so the question is, can we take these powerful tools and do something that really does help a lot of people?
The reason you should care about the story of General Magic is because it involves something fundamental, and that is failure isn't the end. Failure is actually the beginning.
I have actual goosebumps every time I see that trailer. It is insane what happened at General Magic. I've got a long list of questions that, I mean, you know, you see in that, you see Megan Smith, who's just appeared on our screen.
Oh, it's so good to see you, Megan.
Hey, everybody. Good morning from
that's amazing.
Washington, D.C.
Oh, so great to see you.
I think this is one of those unexpected, spectacular surprises for everybody on the line. And for anybody who just needs to equate what they just saw on screen with who just joined us, there's a lady that sits on the screen with a collection of things that could one day become a touchscreen, predicting the Apple Watch, and that one day we'll be able to have something on our wrists. That's Megan. Megan, welcome. I don't think you did the Duke of Edinburgh Award, but you're a very, we're very happy to let you into the conversation as a special guest.
Now I have to learn more and do something about it, or help young people do it, it sounds like. So either one, I'm in.
Yeah, they're both up your street. Amazing. Well, I guess seeing as we have you on the line, maybe I'll ask you both a question, which is, you know, when you look back on that film and with everybody that's just watched that, what are the lessons that you apply today that you might encourage other people to think about when they're going through their career? We've got lots of people on the line of all ages and all experiences, but lots of quite young people in their 20s. What should they carry with them from the film, other than saying, oh my God, I can't believe everything started at this company and I'd never heard of it before?
Megan, this one's for you.
I think it's both of us. I think one thing, this idea, you know, the way the guilds work, this apprentice journey mastery reality in the world has been true for all time with humanity. You learn things from each other. And it doesn't mean that the person needs to be older than you, younger, that it's not an age thing only, but those with more experience can bring a lot of, you know, as Sarah mentioned, I was in the hardware team. I do continue to have lots of objects. I have my Raspberry Pi and my, you know, like Wendell Sanders was the head of the hardware team at General Magic. And, you know, he and Brian and Walt and Amy and, you know, all our colleagues, we learned a lot from them. So I think one of the great opportunities that we had as young engineers and young, you know, I wouldn't divide it into silos, people trying to make change in the world and do something of impact, was working together. And the greatest teachers are ones who don't feel like you don't belong, or, or that you don't know. And so people know things. Often we do a lot of innovation things, and people who know the least sometimes bring the best ideas. And so that was an environment that General Magic created, that our team created, that probably came from other places that they had learned, whether it was with Steve, as Sarah said, or Mark was at the Aspen Institute, other places where ideas welcome, energy welcome, and doing or iterating as a path versus sort of writing up some plans and some decks and all that stuff. Just like start making things, just start making things together. And I think confidence is a big part of something that was there. People had confidence to try, and they really weren't worried about it not working, because you just keep trying again and iterating, and everybody got in that practice, and it was a group practice, so people were welcome.
And I guess it's a great tie-in to what Duke of Edinburgh is, which is really, it's enhancing your skills that you don't necessarily learn when you're sitting in a classroom at school, whether that's kind of outdoors, whether that's navigating, whether that's like collaborating and working in a team. You can do that at the desk, but I think what we learned from that movie and what you just said is sometimes you just got to try, and you just got to get out there, and you've got to use your brain differently for really exciting things to happen, which obviously is what happened at General Magic. I think one of the things, so first of all, I'd love to invite people to submit questions so that over the course of the second half, even though I can talk to Sarah and Megan for hours, I don't do that. So please stick your questions, either you can DM them to me or stick them in the main group. But I think one of the things I'm going to have to ask you both to do, is do a bit of name dropping and storytelling. And I'm going to start with Sarah, because we mentioned this before the video started. And I received quite a lot of messages before today took place, asking me some of the stories about some of the legends of Silicon Valley and what they were doing when they started at General Magic. So Sarah, I remember sitting in a car with you and you telling me about a bunch of checks in a messy shoebox on an engineer's desk. And that engineer can you tell us the story of Pierre Omodia, who of course we now all know as the founder of eBay, and what was he doing at General Magic?
Yeah, no, of course, I'll tell the story. First, I want to just emphasize something that Megan said, which is, I think this is so important. I've never heard you phrase it like this, Megan, but I think this is something for everyone to take home, write it down, the confidence to try. I think so often we just don't even have the confidence to try, but that is the brave, bold, most important thing to do, and to develop that practice of just starting and trying, because it's all about that. As Megan said, it's all about iterating, creating together, doing it again. And then the other thing I would say is persistence, having the persistence to stay with something that's really important to you. It's also important to know when it's time to let something go. But those really important ideas that keep nagging with you, just stay with it. And on the subject of Pierre, so Pierre had a desk. Was he in DevOps, Megan? He was a developer, I think, right?
Yeah, if you think have you heard there's an app for that?
Yeah.
So if you think of the device, all the things that could live on it, that was definitely when, and he was in that amazing team that was working with all the people writing for the platform, for the Magic App platform.
Exactly. So there he was. And on the side, he had this idea that he'd create this little platform where people could buy and sell things. And I think originally, what was the original inspiration? Was it knitting stuff for his girlfriend? It was some small toys or something that he decided that.
Pez dispensers.
That's
Yeah.
No.
For his, I think for his wife Pam, they've been together forever and ever. And I think it was for her and lots of other things, but it was one of the things that was notable.
Yeah, so just like this little place where you could buy and sell Pez dispensers. And that is just the perfect example of this small idea with the right technology that then becomes this global phenomenon called eBay. And he had this, and he was doing it on the side. And he went to the general counsel, Mike Stern, who's in the movie and a friend of ours, and said, basically, I've got this idea, Mike, it's about spying and selling things on the internet. And Mike won't mind me saying this, but Mike said, trust people on the internet? That's a terrible idea. No, we definitely don't want to be part of this company. And so Pierre leaves and goes and starts eBay. But yes, General Magic is right for the stories. But one of my favorite stories is Megan. Megan, what did General Magic mean to you? And then how did it translate into your time at the White House?
Well, just, again, like this path of apprentice journey master, as you get to make things in the world. One of the key things that I learned, we talked a lot about the hardware and stuff, and actually brought up a couple of devices to show you guys. Here's this device. So it's hardware and design, right? That's the Motorola one. This is the Sony one. You know, look how big they are compared to like our phones today. But so there's sort of learning to make a product with others, which again, you know, the confidence to try, and the confidence to try, again, I'd add the word together, because we do things together. And a lot of times there's little cliques that form, and some people get left out. Or do a lot of work on diversity and inclusion of everyone, because everyone belongs in every team if they want to be there. And we can make that possible by being more focused on belonging and welcoming others in tech, which is a big issue we have. But I think the thing that I think our products were about, you know, these devices are this possibility for everyone, right?
Sorry, you're talking. I thought I should just show a picture of you having a chat with President Obama, in case anyone doesn't understand what it means when we said you were at the White House. You were quite literally at the White House. Do carry on. Sorry to distract you.
Just quickly, that's Dr. Holden, who's the president's science advisor, and then I'm sitting there, and then of course President Obama. And President Obama brought this idea of a chief technology officer into our government. You know, we've always had technical people in our government, including our first president, who was pretty technical. But this need of civic tech is what we were focused on. So we think we can drive a car down the street by itself. Now we can you know, Sarah, you're working on amazing things medical. Shouldn't we be working on any subject? So this idea of computer science or technology for all in two dimensions. One, the power tools of our day should be available to all people. Like we should learn coding just like we learn writing or reading. And so if we want to do this thing, we can, you know, write an essay, or we can code up something, or we can edit Wikipedia. Wikipedia is, I think, only 20% women right now, and 80% men. Like, we could fix that. So let's just have everyone do that. And then computer science for all subjects is a big part of that. And so we need to know where the children went on the border as much as where the Amazon packages are. Like, this is sort of so ridiculous. And yet it's not anybody's fault. It's a systems problem. The idea that we don't have an idea in our governments, any of our governments, that there's, let's say, lawyers who are independent lawyers. We have lawyers who do corporate things and government, everything. But there's this idea of tech and government as if there shouldn't be tech people in government, tech people in nonprofit, tech people, just like you would have communicators or others. And so that was what this was about. And so this idea of civic tech, nonprofit tech, and really elevating that, not by adding technology, but adding technologists who leave their company and rotate around. And so that was the idea of doing that. And actually part of the teams, the US Digital Service, which is one of the teams that got created that helps agencies do things on solving problems quickly, was based on the government digital service from UK. So this is happening all over the world. The most digital government is Estonia.
They are. That's incredible, right? I mean, becoming a citizen of Estonia is becoming increasingly compelling in today's day and age.
And the idea isn't just about delivery of government services and the administrative burden of, I mean, how quickly we can, you know, send a tweet, but how slowly to sign up for benefits or something with the schools, or like, you know, and, or you were mentioning like sitting at a school desk. Wouldn't it be great if the Duke of Edinburgh programs were just integrated into our classrooms? And you know what? There's a teacher or two, or probably 20 or maybe 100 who are already doing that. But most people don't know, but we can use the internet to share what's already working. So you can, or promising, so you can think of tech not just as delivery, but policies that are inclusive of all subjects, including tech, that are thinking modernly, but also how are we all solving community building and civic problems together by sharing faster. Those kinds of capabilities, which we did in terms of workforce development or data-driven justice or whatever the programs there were, it was really building communities of practice that included humans who do tech and humans who know the subject and who together, which is a very general magic thing, right? That's something.
It is, and you talk about it and you're like, well, let's just put that in a few sentences, and we're all like, yeah, that's what we need to do. And thank goodness we have people like you thinking about this. Noting that we need to have time for some questions, and we've got some great ones coming in directly and through the portal. I'm going to take, if I may, the first one, which is maybe Sarah and Megan can give some advice, in Wubba, who has said, What advice do you have for a tech startup in 2021? She is joining us today from Zambia.
Oh, that is so cool.
I love Zambia, by the way. It's I've been there many times. I'm very jealous, and I hope we can meet in person at some point.
Can we ask what kind of startup? That would be very helpful.
I don't know, but I know that it's not interactional. So perhaps just a sort of a quick thought about perhaps, I know one of the things you care about, Sarah, is just sort of that everything is accessible on the web, and you can try and fail and reach people. So can we give her a couple of pearls of wisdom?
Yeah, solving a really important problem you care deeply about. I think it has to start there, understanding that problem in great detail, because I think sometimes you have a lot of smart tech people in search of problems and trying to solve those problems when they don't really have the domain expertise. I think Megan was referring to that, bringing the techies and the experts together. I think be prepared to iterate and fail. Focus on inclusion and diversity, make sure you have the right people at the table. And don't underestimate the power of hearts and minds of winning people in the ecosystem to support you. Incredible things can happen when you have that powerful, compelling vision. Even if you don't have all of the pieces worked out, but if you have the right support, incredible things can happen. Megan.
Yeah, we'll ask Megan, and I guess, for Megan, I know you feel so strongly about empowering young people who have incredibly vibrant ideas, which is the Duke of Edinburgh Awards are essentially empowering young people to just expand their skills and participate in society in a different and helpful way. What would be a couple of things you'd give to someone like Mwaba, who is probably trying to merge the things she learned with Duke of Edinburgh with a tech startup she might have on her mind?
Yeah, I think first off, just really emphasize what Sarah said about something you care about, something you're passionate about, because you spend a lot of time in this, and something you believe has impact. And then maintaining flexibility as you see things. I was just thinking about my friend Evan Williams, who is one of the Twitter co-founders, and they founded it as a podcasting like company. And that was a really great idea now, but that was a long time ago when they were doing it, and it wasn't quite time yet. And so they pivoted by playing around with some messaging software one weekend, because Jack Dorsey had been doing taxi software for dispatch. And so they were just doing this, and it was fun. And so they went there. So this sort of playful flexibility about what's out there. I think people face challenges depending on where you are in the world and who you are. You'll face discrimination about ideas, where if you're in a place where there's venture capital money or that kind of resource that's open, you can come and pitch an idea, and they'll like buy a slice of the pizza you're making, and hopefully the pizza keeps growing. But in the case of some places, it's harder to get venture money. And so you may have to, depending on where you are, and also sadly who you are, because gender and race and age and stuff sometimes has discrimination, you can't get as much money, and we have to rectify that. That's an urgent systems change that we have to work on. But it just means you have to pay a little bit of attention of when you need revenue. You should have a plan for revenue, but if you're doing a venture-backed thing, you don't have to go as quickly at that and so that gives you a little more flexibility. And then I just put a couple of resources in the chat. I think community is so important, whether it's a Fab Lab communities, or I started something at Google with colleagues called Women Tech Makers. There's the Grace Hopper celebration is about to meet. I think there are 20 or 30,000 women computer scientists meeting. And so, the Google developer groups, there's all these tech meetups, and they happen everywhere. I think of them as like Wakanda MacGyver, if you've seen the media, these places where people are making things. Colleagues are there for you, and they can help you on that journey.
Yeah, amazing. Ultimately, it's that whole thing we all know of, the people around you can really lift you. And I think about when I started, there were no people really around me, and there wasn't really LinkedIn, and I couldn't just tweet someone. I mean, I don't want to sound too old, but those things just weren't available to me. And now, speaking for myself, I respond to any Twitter I get. I don't have hours to get deep into conversation, but so many people are accessible that never were before. I guess, thank you for that question, Mwaba. We've got a question from someone anonymous. Megan, I'll go to you first, and then there's one for Sarah. What was your motivation when you started this journey that you're on now? I know you had some sort of tech and science in your family, so perhaps you can share a little bit about that.
Yes. So, I think a couple things. One is my dad used to tease me when I was younger. I had the word adventure at the bottom of my resume, so I think that's part of it.
That's very cute.
And again, making change in the world by doing things. I'm very participatory. I very love to do things together. And I was an athlete and other things, so teams. When I was younger, I grew up in Buffalo, New York, and there was a lot going on. You know, our river was on fire. The Great Lakes were in danger of dying. Buffalo's on Lake Erie, it's near Niagara Falls. We had, when we were kids, people were lying down in front of buses in Boston because we couldn't be in this, racially integrated. It's crazy stuff as a kid to watch, but also watching the adults push back to get to where we should be in the world. So with, sort of environmental, civil rights, women's rights, LGBTQ, what kind of democracy do we have to be? We were young during Watergate, and, we continue with this like crazy stuff that goes on in fake news and these things. So I think we were motivated by the combination of challenges, but not, like the school strikers, not daunted to not go after it and try, the generations now and all of you as young people. There's so many problems in the world. President Obama used to keep a sign called "Hard things are hard." And I love that because, yeah, they are. And so, but that doesn't mean you'll work on them. Like I always have stuff. This is a book about, sort of systemic racism. Data science and teamwork and other things can solve these, so how do we get in and solve the things like the UN Sustainable Development Goals? So for me, it was practice makes permanent, is what my swimming coach used to say. And so I think what you practice is what you become able to do, and maybe it's a little harder as you start, or confusing, or you don't, again, have confidence, or you don't know you could do it. And I was lucky. President Carter put solar panels on the White House when I was a kid, and we had mandatory science fair. And so our fabulous teachers at this school in Buffalo, public school, that had no money, but great entrepreneurial teachers, just made everyone do a science project, not learn history of science, but what is it like to make something new, and you can do it. And so I got that confidence that, I could contribute in these ways. And so I was making things in green energy when I was younger in high school, and learned a lot about how to manifest things with others in the world that were urgent. And it mattered and applied. And I think the one point there is that technology and science matter for social and environmental and these kinds of change, just like protest or politics or others. And so I went that way, but we need all the colleagues in the mix.
We do. Two things just to note before we go to the next question. First of all, I don't know what else is on your desk, having seen hardware, books about race and law and data science. I mean, I'm just thinking that maybe you're actually at a dining room table with 25 seats. I want to come and see. It's the first thing. The second thing I noted from what you said, other than, how inspirational and educational is you made green science things at school. I have a school report that my dad has from when I was 4 saying Emma draws lovely pictures of colored pebbles. So I can see why I have not achieved what you've achieved, Megan. I was a bit behind. Let's take some questions from more people, because I'm conscious that we've got just under 15 minutes, a little bit less. A question for Sarah. What was the most interesting feedback you got about the movie, and how has it impacted your life since you made the film? Just so we're clear, other than the cult gathering and following you have garnered of all of your fans who made this movie, along with everyone in it. And I want to just add, by the way, to everybody would know this. When I first met people like Megan and Tony, I hope they don't remember, but I had never met them. I consider myself not that intimidated by people, but honestly, that for me was like being in a room with Beyonce and Madonna. I was like completely unable to breathe. And somebody that helped make the film introduced me as the film's biggest groupie and fan, which I was so embarrassed about. And now I realize it's completely true. 5 years later, that's exactly.
So I forgot the question.
The question was, well, basically I made you a groupie, but what was the most interesting feedback you got about the movie, and how's it impacted your life afterwards?
Oh my God. Well, so much amazing feedback, but I have to say the best feedback is always tears, and it's come in the most unexpected places, frequently from men, middle-aged men, who somehow this touches them and helps them recast some aspect of their life, so that either they can now look at something in their life and think, well, maybe that wasn't a failure, or maybe it's something that I still care about and want to pick up again. But it's happened it happens quite reasonably regularly, and I think like, oh God, that's a job well done. when you've just freed somebody up from that burden of thinking and casting their life in terms of failure, and somehow it's now opened up possibility for them to think about it differently. That's definitely for me the best. And one of the best screenings was in an Eastern European country where everyone was so quiet. It was embarrassingly quiet, and I'm like, oh, this is not going well. Because usually there are certain places where people laugh, and it turns out that afterwards, the number of people who were crying and sharing and talking, and the organizer of the event said it had permitted that particular group of people an opportunity to experience an aspect of their life and their world, which was technology, that they hadn't, and that had touched them deeply. So that's always incredibly gratifying and rewarding.
Amazing. And you talk about recasting an aspect of your life. I remember two moments for me at one of the showings. I remember, at the one hand, I remember Bill Atkinson on stage, who isn't really featured that much in the movie, and being so excited to hear from him, because I know that he hadn't been quite as active a participant. And I remember him, I think sobbing is probably, the right word to use, effectively saying he just hadn't realized what a great many things he'd been a part of creating. And at the flip side, my mother's an identical twin. And after seeing the film, and it's not quite uncharacteristic for her, said that it made her think about her life differently, which I thought was just an astounding thing for a film to do, in a good way, in a great way. We've got a couple more questions, so let's race through those. We've got a question for both Megan and Sarah. What would you have done differently, if anything, on your journey to date? Who's going to take that first?
Oh my gosh.
Very deep. I don't know who said, I don't know. People are not putting the names against some of their questions, so I don't know who asked that, but that's a very deep one.
I do know the answer. I would not have worried so much. If I could go back and tell my 17, 18-year-old self who just finished their Silver Duke of Edinburgh Award, anything, it would be, your life is going to be so full of adventure and magic and extraordinary people, and just don't worry about it. Just let it happen and evolve, and just follow. I call it following the breadcrumbs. When you get those clues of like, oh, this is interesting, or this person is incredible, follow those clues, and life is extraordinarily rich.
Great story to tell us. And Megan, your younger self, who was busy building, green tech and goodness knows what, while the rest of us were reading comics.
All kinds of different things. Reading comics is good too. So I think maybe that ties into Sarah's side, is that it really, this thing of following your heart a little bit. And if I was really lucky, I got to take acoustics from Professor Bose, like Bose speakers. Can you imagine? He was amazing. And one of the things that he said was like, follow your passion. And he also said this interesting thing, which was, he said, kind of keep your bags packed. And what he meant was, he didn't mean like run away from really hard things. He meant like, if people are treating you right, or it's not the right environment, switch environments. And the example he gave, he was working on a course at MIT, and someone, he was supposed to teach this course, and he walked to his office and the curriculum was on his desk. And he's like, well, maybe I'd like to teach this differently. And so he asked if he could kind of adapt the courseware, and if it didn't work, he wouldn't teach it again. And they let him. And so it's one of the greatest courses at MIT now. And by getting that freedom. So I guess part of it is, it matters how people are treated. And so I got to work with amazing people so often. And so I think that I just note that, and like, I was lucky that way. And if you are lucky that way, excellent. And if you're not having that, like, switch places if you can, or adapt it, or call someone on their behavior, because there's so many rules about how we're supposed to work, especially in tech. And they're not true. They're just what people made up. And so the truth is, we should have kindness. It's actually more important than knowledge. And then knowledge comes second. And so being kinder to each other matters a lot. And I think that if you look at what we were hoping to do at General Magic with these technologies, it was really about connecting people and empowerment. And when I look at some of the directions we've gone in with tech, this sort of attention economy, and trying to have our young people, watch the next video, or, we had companies where you know, one of the companies, Facebook, there was this horrific stuff going on with the Rohingya, and they weren't prioritizing features that would stop bullying or stop misinformation and, you know, as high. And that doesn't mean there weren't people inside that company trying to do that. They just weren't able to impact. And so this reprioritization matters. And it's same with LifePath is there too.
I mean, I'm just nodding with everything, plus noticing, you know, Sarah dropping in Kheiron Medical, you dropping in Professor Bose. I'm trying not to be starstruck and keeping the conversation going. We've got a couple more questions here, which I think we can just about squeeze in, and to end with a couple of really great questions. The first thing for Megan and for Sarah both is, how do you navigate in what is perceived as a very male-dominated industry? And I will just add to that, for those who've seen the film, I'm in software, and when I was watching General Magic, there were just so many women everywhere, and I was thinking to myself, where are most of those women today? Have things changed? How has that impacted your careers, Sarah and Megan?
Well, Megan's so eloquent on this. I'm going to let her answer this question. I'll have a little follow-up.
I'm
making you do all the work, Megan. You a surprise edition, and we're making you do all the work.
It's okay. I guess I just show you this one.
Oh God, I mean, I'm serious. But what's on that table?
That's the thing. Look who this is. So who invented algorithms? Like, let's ask the question. Yeah. Because at the time of Darwin, who isn't, you know, looked at our past as humanity, Ada looked to our future. She said, I wish to bequeath to the generations a calculus of the nervous system. That quote describes her saying, I think we can figure out the math of the cerebrum like we figured out the math of the planets and astronomy, you know, and so isn't it interesting that her father was with Mary Shelley when she wrote Frankenstein?
Wow.
That Mary Shelley's mother, who wrote The Vindication of the Rights of Women, died in childbirth, having Mary. That we ask ourselves in now this fourth industrial age, the same questions as the first industrial age. Charles Dickens was at Ada's bedside when she died. Charles Dickens asks us about Oliver Twist, right? Is Oliver Twist working in some cleaning the internet for something, or some kind of like terrible job right now again in this fourth industrial age? So how about we don't have always an industrial age? Why don't we have like an industrial community, you know, environmental, like all of the goals of the Sustainable Development Goals? So I just think that one of the things that it matters, our history matters, that we don't know that Ada invented algorithms. You know, we don't know. I have another one, that Ida is the original Black Lives Matter data scientist of the late 1800s. You know, that data science is for equality and justice. That the woman Jane Addams, who won the Nobel Peace Prize for inventing social work, was using data science for not a smart city, but a wise community in Chicago, a smart, wise city. So that it's about all of humanity being included. And that's what these technologies really are for. And the General Magic is not absent from that hope as the goals that were there. This empowerment is really what the idea of these devices, and us being connected as humanity, not being hurtful to each other, but really celebrating and the diversity of us. And so I think it's really important to reflect this history, the truth of the history. I just put in the chat, you know, Bletchley Park, you know, saving 11 million lives and shortening World War II with code. Alan Turing was gay, not out, closeted. The Duchess of Cambridge's great aunt and grandmother were code breakers at Bletchley Park. People worked to invent computing. You know, here in the United States, the ENIAC team was Eckert and Mockley with the hardware, and 6 women were the first computer scientists, invented software programming here in America. Lost history story, 70, 80 years. Wrote the first subroutines, all that. If we don't know our true history, then we recreate something that's incorrect in the future and imbalanced.
I think there's a Duke of Edinburgh series that's got to be coming about great women. We're going to have to do something about that afterwards and pick up some of those pearls of wisdom and great quotes you've just given us. Sarah, from you?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, just very practical. May I finish my thought, please? Just hold on to that line. Because, you know, you have to fight to be heard, and you have to have the confidence that your opinion matters as a woman, and you have to just make sure that you keep saying that. May I finish my thought, please? Because in reality, we have work to do. And
yes, we do.
As Megan said, we are working to bring everyone to the table, but in the meantime, when you are at that table, just make sure that you are heard. Fight for being heard.
100%. Well, I guess I'm going to leave with the last question.
Other people can help too.
Yes.
Other people can help, right?
Yeah.
So when you see that happening to someone, say, hold on a sec.
Yeah.
Absolutely right. Right. 30-second answer from you two, and then we're going to say our goodbyes. Do you have a prediction for the future of tech, Justin asked, for any sector or area circa 2030 or 2050? I've just come from an event where the Astronomer Royal, Lord Rees, was talking about cyborgs and our human brains, which blew my mind. What are you two thinking? What are we going to see in 10, 20, 30 years' time?
Well, what I want to see is sustainable energy. That's the thing. I mean, I want to leave the planet knowing that the ecosystem is intact. Like, that's what I think every day I spend my days thinking about that. So I know my next thing, having worked on this cancer project, I think we're getting really close in amazing tech. It's going to really make an impact. But next for me is like how we can do that. And I think the way we can do that is coming together, working together, and using technology. So that's what keeps me up at night. Megan?
Yeah, I think I think you're right. I think Lord Rees is right about the kinds of coming silicon, carbon combination, like not carbon is bio, but this sort of integration of capabilities. My hope is that it's not massively imbalanced with who gets to be part of that and who doesn't. It doesn't divide us more, as like Sarah's getting into. And I just popped a couple of things like with MIT, we have an Indigenous Communities Fellowship. So innovators who are Indigenous people who have incredible culture to bring forward and innovations. The UN Solution Summit, they're solution makers, all of you on this call, young people, everybody, work on our hometown for our homework. So I want to use, I'm going to give you one more, which is we're connected at the speed of light. That's an undersea cable. So can we use this internet for lifting each other, connecting each other, hearing each other, and solving problems together, especially those solution makers who are the least funded, whether they're doing social, whatever kinds of things. So that's my hope. And I think
there's the alarm.
We have to force ourselves.
Let's end on that. We know Megan, the surprise, unbelievable guest, Sarah, the amazing, non-surprise, but equally unbelievable guest. Thank you so much for joining Alumni Connect. I imagine all of the people who've done Duke of Edinburgh all over the Commonwealth, we've got people calling from all over the world and listening, will be stunned, dazzled, and excited, and probably like me, will end up watching General Magic movie 20 times. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and we look forward to the next one around Christmas time. Take care, everyone.
With your adventures, to everyone out there, just wishing you all the best for everything you want to do.
You're here.
Yeah, tweet us if you wanna continue the conversation. There's a tweet from me to Sarah and Megan, including the International Awards, and we'd love to hear what you thought or if you have further questions. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Everyone going one by one. Sarah, thank you. Megan, thank you.